Welcome back to the Popcorn Junkies podcast, where we explore the movies that haunt us. Now, if you've known me for any amount of time, or if you've ever talked to me about movies, you'll know that I love weird movies. And that's one of the reasons that I started this podcast originally, was because I wanted to talk about weird movies that I felt I was alone in watching. The weirder, the better, in my opinion. It's one thing to ask your buddy if he's seen, whatever new movies in the theater, and then he's like, yeah, I've seen it, and you're like, yeah, I've seen it, and then, that's it. But asking him, hey, have you seen this movie that was made by a fucking Argentinian director in 1963, and he only directed one movie, and it was about ghosts running a taxi service? No one's gonna know what you're talking about. And that I like stuff like that. I like learning about weird movies like that, and I like telling people about weird movies like that. So that's why I chose this movie. This is one of the... This was like my entry into movies that were weird and kind of unknown. So grab your popcorn, because today I'm talking about teeth. Alright, so Teeth came out in 2007. It was written and directed by Mitchell Lichtenstein, who's an actor and director. I don't recognize anything he's been in, but Google tells me he won an award for his role in Streamers from 1983. So if you know what Streamers is, he was in that. I have no idea what that is. This one's a horror comedy, so it feels lighter than some of the other things I've covered, but nonetheless, it's still really good. Here's a really cool bit of trivia that I learned while doing research. I think I want to start adding little trivia bits in, because I think that's cool when you're like, oh yeah, this little weird trivia thing this movie did. Anyway, here's a cool little piece of trivia that I've learned while I was doing research about the movie. The movie was shot in Austin, Texas, and while shooting it, people were protesting the filming because they thought the film was pornography. So it took the county sheriff to intervene to tell the protesters that while the movie was in bad taste, it wasn't porn. So they should just leave him alone and let him shoot the movie, which I think is hilarious. Also, before I get started, shout out to Ashley Time on Instagram. She was able to guess this episode correctly. If you haven't yet, go follow our Instagram to keep up with episode updates and stuff like that. Anyways, let's get into the movie. Actually, before I forget, I watched this movie on Plex, which I'd never heard of before, but it is free. It's also on Tubi, but oddly, it's only the Spanish dub version. Apparently, it's also on Zumo, but I didn't do Zumo. Like I said, I did Plex, which Plex was free. It didn't require me to sign up. It literally, you could just skip the sign up and just start watching movies. So that was cool, but you do have to watch ads and stuff. But I don't really care. We start off with a nice aerial shot of a neighborhood in a nice looking town. As the scene pans to the left, we get a glimpse of two huge smokestacks. They're those big chimney things that smoke comes out of in chemical plants. Whenever I see them, I think of The Simpsons. If you need like a visual, like the two big towers that loom over the city. We look down, and we're having a bird's eye view of a house. In the front yard are two adults laying in lawn chairs under the shade of a tree, and two kids sitting in a kiddie pool. The music, the music that's playing kind of gives me like Edward Scissorhands vibes. Like when he's in the town, living his best life, cutting hair and doing all that. It's kind of like light and whimsy. That's what it reminded me of the first time I heard it. Anyway, down to the pool. The boy splashes the girl with water, and the boy's dad tells him to stop splashing your sister. And the boy, whose name is Brad, says, she's not my sister. So the parents aren't married yet, and had these children before, getting together, is the vibe that you get. Brad is really against being nice to the girl. Brad looks to be like, 7 or so, and I'm going to guess the girl's around 4. Like, they're young, right? Brad kind of wiggles around in the pool, and they have their back to us, so we can't see what they're doing under the water, but it's very clear what's going on. So Brad wiggles a little bit, and he does something, and the girl looks over at him, and Brad says, "Let's see yours now." So, we've got a little show and tell thing going on. In a passing conversation between the parents, we find out that the father's name is Bill, and the mother's name is Kim. While the parents are talking about whatever the fuck, all we hear is Brad yell in pain. Bill and Kim rush over, and in the background we can see both of the smokestacks looming over the house. They run over to Brad and ask what happened, and Brad lifts up his finger to show 2 deep cuts. They ask Dawn, which is the girl, so her name's Dawn. They ask Dawn if she's okay, to which she doesn't answer. This is where the opening credits starts. The credits roll over footage of what looks like bacteria under a microscope. I was never really good at biology, so it may be like cells or something. I think it's supposed to be cells. I won't spoil why, but I think it's supposed to be cells. Anyways, now we go forward a little bit, and Dawn is giving this speech to a group. I'm assuming it's like a church group or something, but it's about staying abstinent. It's about not having sex until marriage. And while she's giving the speech, she's focused on this one guy in the crowd. We'll meet him officially later, but he's pretty focused on her too. After the speech, Dawn is in the hallway with 2 of her friends. They're talking about how they don't hang out anymore. And Dawn says, well, her mom is sick again. In between that and her job, she has no time. And while they're having this conversation, if you listen in the background, you can hear the speaker, like the next speaker talking to everyone. And he's talking about how you can't masturbate or have butt sex until marriage, which is like, come on, dude. If you won't let me have any soda, at least let me have lemonade. You know what I'm saying? Remember that guy I was just talking about? How they were eyeing up each other? Well, he knows Dawn's friends, and he comes over, in which he's introduced to us as Toby. Toby is new to the area and will be starting school with them tomorrow, which, what a coincidence. So Dawn is still in high school, I'm guessing. They don't really ever specify, but when she's in the school later, it seems like it's high school. But again, they don't ever outwardly tell us, but I'm 100% sure it's high school. Toby tells Dawn that he really liked her speech, and I feel like this is supposed to be a weird way to flirt. Dawn comes home and goes to check on her mother, who is laying in bed. And 10 years have supposedly passed, and the mother looks the exact same. Not even gray hair. The mother looks the exact same, which was kind of the father they at least gave a gray wig to make him look older. No, the mother looks exactly like she did in the opening scene. They're talking about how her day went, doing a little speech thing, and how her mother was feeling when they get cut off by some loud metal music. It's night now. Dawn is in the bathroom brushing her teeth, about to take a shower. As she opens the shower, Brad jumps out to scare her. Now, alright, I'm all for scaring your siblings. It's probably one of life's greatest pleasures. But why the fuck is Brad naked in the shower that's not running if he's trying to scare his sister? That doesn't make any sense. We do get a chance to see some of Brad's shitty tribal tattoos, and he has mutton chops too. If you're familiar with Alien Ant Farm, he kind of looks like the singer of Alien Ant Farm from around the 2000s. If you're not familiar with Alien Ant Farm, take a second to Google Alien Ant Farm 2001 and look at the singer. He looks pretty much essentially like Brad. Just give him mutton chops, and that'll be Brad. It looks the exact same. Dawn is in her room now, bedazzling some shirts, when she hears this, I don't know how to describe it. Not a banging, but a tapping on her wall. It's a little louder than a tapping, but a tapping on her wall, right? She puts her earplugs in, and we can see it's Brad sitting in his room listening to heavy metal and shooting a wall with a pellet gun. He seems like a well-adjusted young man. It keeps saying heavy metal whenever whenever he's playing his music. It keeps saying heavy metal playing. This is going to be a total nitpicking here. It's not. I don't think it's heavy metal, because some of it sounds like black metal. Some of it sounds like deathcore. I know heavy metal is just like the super basic over-encompassing term, but I wouldn't call what he's listening to heavy metal. But that's not important. That's just me nitpicking some things, which is not necessary at all. But I do that anyway. Next morning, Dawn is riding her bike to school, and we get the most cliche early 2000 high school life scene. Like, people are smoking on campus, pushing each other over, listening to loud music, talking about sex and stuff. Picture any movie from that time trying to show how rowdy high schoolers are, and that's what's happening here. Dawn meets Toby at the front door and welcomes him to his new school. Cut to class, and the first thing we see is a book open to a full-ass diagram of a wiener and balls. The teacher begins the lesson for the vagina, but won't even say it. He kind of mumbles through it like he's embarrassed about it. And I mean, you're a teacher, dude. You gotta say that shit with your chest, you know what I mean? Anyways, he tells him to turn the page, where we see that every textbook has a big-ass sticker censoring the vagina. Apparently, the school board has decided it wasn't appropriate to show high school students in sex ed a diagram of a vagina. One student, rightfully so, asks why it's okay to show the penis diagram but not the vagina one. Beautiful question. I love that. However, you forget that school systems often make absolutely no sense when coming up with decisions. Dawn says it's censored because women have natural modesty, and the class laughs at her. And Toby tries to stick up for her, but you can't hear him because everyone's laughing at her. After school, Dawn, Toby, and the two friends, whose names were said like once in passing, and I can't remember what they are, go to the movies. They say they can't see the rated R movie, and even the PG-13 movie might have quote-unquote heavy making out, so they decide to watch some cartoon. You can't see it, but it sounds literally like Tom and Jerry or something like that. Toby and Dawn's hand touch while sharing the popcorn, which is the universal signal for these guys are going to hook up eventually. And Toby looks at her with this face like he wants to go in for a kiss. Super short scene real fast. It's not important to describe in detail, but back at the house, Brad is in his room with the girl smoking a bong, and he's showing off his finger. And he says he doesn't remember what happened to him, but he thinks Dawn bit him. That's all that happens. But it's just important to know that he still has the scars on his finger, and, you know, he's still conscious about it, sort of. Moving on. Toby drives the four friends. Thanks to subtitles, I get a reminder that the girl in the group's name is Gwen and the boy's name is Phil. To the woods to hang out, I guess. This is apparently like a big make-out hotspot at night. Turns out there's this little lake in the woods with a nice waterfall and a cave, which is where, according to Gwen, people go to have sex. Also, Gwen is wearing wedges. Why the fuck would you wear wedges if you plan on walking through the woods? Back to Brad, and he's just got done having sex with that girl in his bedroom. Which, just to also give you a visual, his room is like all black with tons of pictures of naked women on the walls. Not like in a obsessed stalker kind of way, but in a I tear these photos out of old Playboys and put them on my wall kind of way. After the deed, Brad gets up and grabs a dog treat and calls for his dog, who he has named Mother. I don't know how to describe this part really. He has a cage for the dog in his room that's attached to a hole in the wall. So the dog can stay outside if it wants, but if it comes in, it's in a cage, if that makes any sense. This is where we see that Mother is aggressive and she snaps at him through the cage. He lays back in the bed with the girl and tries to sexually feed her a dog biscuit, and like a normal person, she doesn't fucking like that. Back to the woods, Toby and Dawn are having a weird talk about them both being virgins. Toby said he's still a virgin in God's eyes because one thing that happened like a year ago, and he's been dealing with the guilt ever since. Dawn tells him he's stronger for having dealt with this. Okay, is this real? I've never listened or been around abstinence type of people, but this seems super over the top. Like, is this hard based in reality, or is this exaggerated a little bit? Because I don't know. I cannot tell. It's nighttime. It's raining and storming, and Dawn is laying in her bed where she decides to touch herself for the first time. The whole time she's picturing herself and Toby being married, and right as she's about to play Vagina DJ, she sees one of those monsters from those black and white movies in her head, and she gets too scared to play Clitar Hero. We're back in school. That's where we are. Dawn comes in late for her first class, who are, I'm guessing, learning about evolution. The teacher's talking about how rattlesnakes got their rattle. I don't know. Also, there's like 7 kids in this class. This feels more like a school club or something. Also, they're talking about how the rattlesnake got its rattle by how, like, at one point, the diamondback rattlesnakes didn't have a rattle, and one was probably born with a mutation that gave it something similar to a rattle, and explaining exactly how evolution works, right? The theme of snakes comes up kind of a lot in this. There's a point where, I'll point it out a little later, where we see Medusa fully, and later on, someone's watching a movie, and the movie has Medusa in it. And like we just said here with the snakes, there's a lot of themes of snakes, which I was realizing when I was writing this. Anyways, time for the locker room scene. If you wanted to see some dong in your peripheral vision, I've got great news for you. All the dudes just got out of the showers, and they're walking around each other in towels, or without them. You see like 3 dongs just flopping about. Also, the coach is in the locker room too, and he's watching those boy butts, dude. If you watch this movie, focus on the coach. He is searching for those dongs. My boy is down bad for some teenage dong. Toby is on the phone with Don, who is in another locker room, but just with girls covered in towels. None of these girls walk around naked. They all have the modesty to wear towels in their scenes, so we don't see titties, we just see wieners. I understand you, movie. I see what you're about. So Don's telling Toby that she doesn't think they should see each other anymore, and pretty much Toby agrees. You know, she says she wants to stay pure, and he's like, well, yeah, we should stay pure, da-da-da-da-da. So back to her house, Don's laying in bed, and here's Brad arguing with his girlfriend. After his girlfriend leaves, Don goes to talk with him, saying basically she'd like how they act to each other to change. Then she says, look, I don't know why we've never been close. To which Brad, in his infinite wisdom, responds, yes, you do. This abstinence thing is bullshit. We all know who you've been saving that for. And I've been real patient. You think I like living here? He thinks Don is saving himself for him, and he believes this so much and wants it so much that he continues to live with his parents, who he says he hates. Brad is not a smart guy. Obviously, Don runs out of his room. She calls Toby from the woods and tells him to meet her at Sex Caves. My words, not hers. And fucking Toby pulls up like he's racing Paul Walker at the end of Fast and the Furious 1. I mean, he is fucking burning rubber through that dirt trail. She tells Toby that she brought her bathing suit and they should quickly head for the water. They both have this little awkward conversation before jumping in the water and having their first kiss by the waterfall by Sex Cave. Toby's getting a little handsy with Don, and she takes his hands off him and says, purity. And they both kind of nod their heads at each other. And then Dawn swims off to the entrance of Sex Cave. Toby very quickly behind her. She pulls herself up from the water and finds several blankets on the ground. Clearly, this is the designated sex area. Those blankets probably smell and are definitely crusty. They pull a blanket over them and they start to kind of make out hard. Dawn says they should stop, but Toby gets more aggressive. She tells him to get off, and Toby pulls down his underwear and says, you don't even have to do anything, and starts trying to force himself on her. Okay, I know this isn't funny. Okay? I know a sexual assault scene is not funny. However, the first time I heard the line that Toby is about to say here, I had to pause the movie because I was laughing so hard. And again, it's not a joke. This part isn't played for laughs. Okay? This is, they weren't making a joke out of the sexual assault scene. I just want to be so clear that this wasn't intended as a joke. I just thought it was fucking hilarious. Okay? I was just so caught off guard. So Dawn tells Toby that she wants to keep her promise that she made. And Toby responds with, come on! I haven't jerked off since Easter! I wanted to let that part sit with you for a second. So earlier when Toby said that he was still pure in the Lord's eyes because the only thing he's ever done happened like a year ago, he was referring to jorking it on Easter. That's Jesus' second birthday. You don't jerk it on Jesus' second birthday, dude. I don't even do that, okay? That's not something you do. His delivery of it is so fucking funny. I haven't jerked off since Easter. Oh, okay. I need to continue. Whenever I tell people about this movie, I make sure I quote that part because it makes me laugh so fucking hard. Okay, so he starts to do, and he's telling her, "Don't worry, you're still pure in his eyes," which is so fucked, honestly. Then he gets real quiet. He gets off of her and starts to scream. Dawn is like, "What's wrong?" and sits up to look at Toby, where she starts to scream too. We then pan to Toby standing there, and my boy's dick is gone. Blood's all over his pelvic area, and no wiener. A fitting punishment for rapists in my eyes, but this isn't a political podcast, so I won't get into that here. We get to see Toby's detached dick on the ground, and he turns around and runs off. I'm sure to try to go to a hospital. Dawn is freaking out now. Not only did she just get assaulted, but now this guy also got his dick ripped off in front of her. She's having a bad day. It's dusk, and Dawn is riding her bike home. We see her silhouette ride in front of these two big smokestacks. It's never explicitly said, but I think the chemical plant that they keep showing is supposed to be implied to be the cause of what we will find out later. Like the pollution from it or something like that caused, what we'll learn about later. Back at the house, Dawn is laying in bed and she keeps replaying the incident with Toby over in her head. She snaps and starts ripping pictures off her wall. We swap to Brad's room for a second where we see him laying in bed listening to Dawn's mental breakdown. And he's got that finger with those scars in his mouth, like how a baby will put their thumb in their mouth when they go to sleep. He seems like a well-adjusted young man. It's the next morning now. Dawn has another one of those purity speeches, and she's still very clearly affected by what happened the other night, and she's having trouble getting through her speech. As she's talking, she starts rambling to herself. The crowd interjects from time to time, and it's hard to tell if what they're saying is real or if it's just in her mind. She's struggling with being assaulted, but now also not being pure. She says, "There is something inside of me that is lethal," and the crowd chants back in unison, "The serpent! The serpent! The serpent!" Which, again, another snake reference. I'm kind of unsure what the snake is supposed to reference here. If it's supposed to be like the biblical snake, the one that made Adam and Eve sin for the first time, or if it's supposed to be like something else. The snake could visualize wieners because Toby got his wiener bitten off. So the snake could be the wieners. I don't know. Okay. I didn't mean to do that. I was kind of thinking to myself out loud. Anyway, Dawn gets a ride home from this guy at her school that we had seen early on in passing, but he really didn't say anything or anything. And they don't say his name through the whole movie. I had to look it up later because he has such a small part, but his name is Brian. So Dawn gets a ride home from Brian, and he seems to have a little crush on her. As she gets out of his car, Brian asks if she'd like to go on a date with him. She says that's funny and gets out of his car, and dude drives off and is not taking rejection well. Dawn rides off on her bike before Brian comes back around. He gets out and rings the doorbell and is knocking on the door very aggressively. Brad answers the dude, and he tells the dude to fuck off, and when the guy decides not to fuck off, Brad punches him in the face. And at first I was like, hell yeah, Brad, stand up for your sister. But then I remembered that Brad didn't see any of that go down. He only saw a guy at his door asking for Dawn and gave him the old Mike Tyson to the jaw. So, anyway, Dawn goes back to the sex cave and is horrified to see Toby's detached penis still sitting on the cave floor. We get a lovely little visual of the penis on the ground and a crab eating it. James's fun fact, crabs are not native to Austin, Texas. Ponds and lakes don't have the proper environment that crabs need to thrive. So, that means someone had to go buy a crab with the sole purpose of setting it on a fake penis for a movie, which is fun. We get a very nice shot of Dawn standing on top of a cliff looking over some trees and such. After a moment, she takes off her purity ring and drops it, never to find the ring again and never to be pure again. Back to our house now. Dawn is soaking the page in her textbook in water to try to remove the sticker covering the diagram of a vagina. She manages to remove it, and now for the first time, she's seeing a vagina other than in a mirror. Dawn decides to do research on mutations in the vagina and comes across a site of history saying that back in the day, men would have to fight with these monsters with mouth vaginas, and they refer to the vagina with teeth as vagina dentata. This is where we see like Medusa in full, because they're talking about Greek mythology and how Greek heroes used to have to slay or used to have to conquer these monsters with vagina mouths. And the page she's on has got a real big picture of Medusa. Like I said, snakes play kind of an important part in here. Time for another James's fun fact. Vagina dentata is real. Sort of. There have been several cases where tumors found growing inside vaginas are removed and they're found to be growing teeth. Apparently, it is common for some tumors to grow teeth, which is unfair and disgusting. That fact wasn't really fun. That was James's gross fact, but Dawn decides to go to a doctor, which is one of the smartest things anyone's ever done in movies. Dawn tells the doctor that she's afraid she has adaptations. The doctor starts poking around down there, and I have no idea how these things are supposed to go, so I don't know if this doctor is being extra or not, but Dawn's telling him that it's starting to hurt and she's getting uncomfortable. And while Mr. Doctor Man is telling her to calm down, he starts to ask, "What did you put in here?" When we hear a chomp, and the doctor screams. He's trying to wrestle his hand out of Dawn and is dragging her around the doctor's table. Dawn is screaming, he's screaming, and he finally gets his hand out, and we see that 4 of his fingers are all missing. Dawn, horrified, sees his fingers on the ground, and the doctor, while on the floor, is just screaming, "Vagina dentata! Vagina dentata! Vagina dentata!" Dawn rightfully panics and races out the door. She goes back to the sex cave again. Well, the sex pond, I guess. The pond to the sex cave. And we can see that there are police and a dive team searching the water. The dive team surfaces and brings with them Toby's body. He's drowned. Good. Good for him. Back at home now, Dawn is losing it. She thinks she's a mythical monster and a murderer. Dawn goes to talk to her mother and finds her mother on the floor. She grabs the phone to call 911, and we can see Brad's doors open, and he's having sex with his girlfriend, with his mom's body in clear view of them. Who in their right mind would have sex with their door open in a house that they share with their parents and their sister? I guess it's just to show how, I don't give a fuck Brad is. Anyway, Dawn wakes up from a bad dream, and all we can hear, we don't get to see her dream, but we get to see her having it, so we just get to hear the sound effects of the dream, right? And all we can hear is just chomping sounds, which it was probably about the doctor. She's in the hospital waiting room with her dad. Her dad tells her to go home and get some sleep. She gets home and Brad is having a loud argument with his girlfriend. So, a very distraught Dawn goes to the only other person she trusts, which is Brian. I don't know why she trusts Brian, but she goes to Brian. She tells him that she's freaking out. She has no one to talk to. She says her mom's in the hospital. She's killed someone, almost 2 people. She has teeth in her vagina. And the ancient Greeks and Egyptians said a hero must conquer her. And after hearing everything this girl said, while she's literally crying in his arms, this dude lets her take a bath, gives her a muscle relaxer, lights about 50 candles in his room, and pops some champagne. He deserved to get punched in the face. I didn't feel sorry for him at first when he got punched in the face, but he definitely deserved to get punched in the face. Cool thing I want to note, the way that Dawn's laying in the bathtub is very reminiscent of the scene from Nightmare on Elm Street where Nancy falls asleep in the tub and Freddy's hand comes out of the water from in between her legs. I don't know if it was supposed to do that. It also is kind of reminiscent of the cover of Slither, I think the movie is. I wonder if Slither came out before or after. Anyway, it's very reminiscent of the Nightmare on Elm Street scene. She comes out of the bathroom and asks for her clothes because she needs to go to the police. Brian tells her, "No, don't go anywhere. You're on drugs. They'll never believe you like this." He gives her a glass of wine, and she's so messed up she can't even hold it right. She tries to drink it, and she spills it all over herself. Next thing we see, Dawn is naked on Brian's bed, and he's touching all over her. He puts a condom on and starts to, do it. She tells him to stop because the teeth will hurt him. And this asshole's like, no, I'm the hero. Remember what you said? I'm conquering them. Don't worry. You're not supposed to like Brian. He wasn't supposed to be a likable character. Why you gotta make him such a piece of shit character? What a fucking... Okay. What a fucking piece of shit character. I'm not gonna feel bad when your penis gets bitten off. We jump to the coroner's office. Like, in between them having sex, it kind of cuts to the coroner's office, and this part's so fucking cool. It cuts to the coroner's office, where the medical examiner is telling a detective that he found a tooth inside the penis. Toby's penis. Toby's laying on one of those medical exam tables, or like coroner exam tables, where they examine the corpses and shit. He describes the tooth as being like a shark and a lamprey. So not only does Dawn have vagina teeth, but she has vagina shark teeth, which is a fact that I had forgotten, but is very cool. So he says that the teeth are like a shark on the exposed part and are like a lamprey in the root. And I don't quite know what that means. I guess lamprey teeth are more, what's the word I'm looking for? More strongly held in place by their roots than shark teeth are, because shark teeth fall out all the time because they can just make new ones. So I'm assuming that's what they mean. However, whatever test they run on the tooth shows that the tooth is human. I don't quite know what test that would be to show that a shark lamprey tooth is human, but it is, apparently. So anyways, back to the sex. Dawn and Brian just finished doing it, and they're laying together. Dawn says she's surprised he isn't dead, and this guy just doesn't get the hint that she's unwell and is just like, ha, you're funny. The next morning, Dawn gets dressed so she can go to the police. Brian convinces her to stay and have sex again, and while they're doing it this time, Brian gets a phone call. He answers it and asks Dawn to say something into the phone. He hangs up, and Dawn's like, what was that? And he was like, well, that was my buddy. And she was like, why would you be talking to your buddy while we were doing the frick? He says, look, we made a bet that I couldn't bag you, pretty much. And Dawn says, you made this bet when I had a sacred promise. And Brian says, well, it wasn't so sacred, wasn't it? Dawn's like, yes, it was very sacred. It was a very sacred promise. And then he was like, yeah, well, your mouth is saying sacred promise, but your pussy is saying get this wiener, or fucking something like that. And then immediately Dawn uses her shark mouth in the South to go chomp down on Brian's wiener. Good for her. We get this really gnarly visual of blood squirting out of a bloody stump. He hilariously calls for his mom while Dawn just casually leaves. Okay, a lot of what is about to happen is going to happen with like a minute worth of screen time. So there's not a lot of details. I'm just going to give you the highlights real quick, okay? Dawn goes to the hospital to check on her mom and is told to wait a second. Brian is in the hospital getting his dick sewn back on, and the doctors make a small penis joke. Bill goes to tell Brad that he needs to get out of the house, and which ends up in them having a physical fight, which ends with Brad opening the door to Mother's cage, and the dog jumps on his dad. Dawn's mother is dead, and she lays with her. While his dad is on the floor, pinned underneath the dog, Brad asks, why did you make Dawn his sister? Bill says, I know you loved your mom. When Brad cuts him off, I don't care about that bitch. I loved her, implying that all these years he's been in love with Dawn, which is super weird because she was like 4 when they met. Dawn's dad and, strangely enough, Brad's girlfriend go to the hospital to meet with Dawn. Brad's girlfriend, who we never get a name for, tells Dawn that she's sorry. She heard her mom screaming when she fell, but Brad told her to ignore it because she screams all the time. Now Dawn knows what she must do. She must bite off Brad's penis. We get a scene of Dawn in her mother's mirror putting on makeup while the sound of drums and what sounds like a rattlesnake rattle plays. Which is cool because if you remember, we've been talking about snakes all this time and how they were evolving. And so this is supposed to be like her evolved fully. She's fully come into full use of her second mouth, whatever you want to call it. She's fully come in use of that. She's fully evolved. So Brad's laying in bed watching a movie, and he notices Dawn in his doorway. He's watching a movie with Medusa. So again, snakes. Snakes are everywhere in this movie. She quietly sits on his bed and starts to slowly touch his face and chest. He asks why she's doing this now, and she asks if he's scared. So Brad Brad enters his sister, and as he's, doing his sister, he's talking to her, and he says, "We always knew this would happen since we were kids." He then gets a flashback to getting his finger bit as a child, and he seems to realize that Dawn didn't bite him like he originally thought. He's kind of figured it out, and as he does, Dawn bites down. The dog's been barking this whole time as if it knew something bad was about to happen. Brad is in shock and looking for his dick when Dawn gets up and stands in the middle of his room. We get a view of Brad on his bed in the background while Dawn's legs are front and center of the frame. His dick falls to the ground from between her legs. He had a Prince Albert. He tries to sick mother on Dawn, but the dog just calmly walks over and eats his wiener. Good. He deserved that. Dawn rides off in the distance with her bike and backpack before she hitches a ride with an old man. She rides with the old man until nighttime when they pull up to a convenience store. Dawn tries to get out of the car, but the old man won't let her out and keeps making the creepiest advances towards her. He's not even, saying anything. He just keeps smiling and sticking his tongue out. It's super it's weird, right? That's a weird way to try to proposition someone for sex, for A, and B, every time he sticks his tongue out, you can hear it and it sounds wet and it's disgusting. Anyway, it's fucking gross. Dawn tries the door again when a smile creeps over her face. She's decided to use her south mouth to fight against the creeps of the world. Good for her. And that's it. Roll credits. I love this movie. It's pretty solid. It's not perfect, of course. It's not a blockbuster. It was nominated for a bunch of awards, but it's not winning any awards. I have fun watching it, which is important. I'll give it a 7.5 taint teeth out of 10. If you want to watch something new and you have free time, maybe cue this up. It was free on Plex. Like I said, I didn't even have to make an account, which is pretty cool. Anyways, until next time, enjoy the nightmares. See ya.